Actually, I confess that a student actually asked a question about this as we finished our discussion of cascading drop-down lists, so I figured it's a great time to actually fit this in as well. The whole idea of autocomplete, okay? It's a nice alternative to a select, especially if you have a very large number of options, right? In the past, I could look for the code example, but anyway, I'll just mention it that in the past I've done a demo where I randomly created thousands upon thousands of records, right? I just use a bit of script to actually do that in a database that would be, populated in a drop-down list. And, it's kind of a fun demo because, it was amazing how long, every time you went back to the page, how long it took for it to, actually pull all the data and get it down into the browser, into the drop-down list, right? So this is a very useful using autocomplete instead. If you've got a very large number of records, then putting them all into a drop-down list just is not practical. Okay, it just takes too long and it frustrates the end user having to wait for that. Okay, so what we often want to do is present a shrinking list of options based on characters entered. So they start typing characters, and the more they type, the smaller and smaller the list of matching options becomes. And important to point out, you can do that with a starts with or with contains, right? Those are operators we can use in our link query. If you want to just have it narrow down based on the starts with the letters that you've been typing in, that's perfectly fine. Or you can search anywhere inside for the pattern of characters you typed so far. Either one works, right? But basically for this, there are other ways, okay, that you can go about this, but we already have, okay, in our MVC template for our project, right from the very beginning, all the jQuery support has been there, okay, all the resources necessary to use jQuery. Well, jQuery also has this autocomplete widget, right? So there are other ways to go about an autocomplete besides using jQuery, but hey, I haven't found anything any easier to put in place, and we already have everything we need, okay, basically available inside of our MVC. So just follow along with me. I've got the copy-paste code here, and we're just going to basically get this up and running. All right, so coming back, this is exactly as we left it off a couple minutes ago in step 26, okay? We're going to go in and, oh, by the way, right in my copy-paste file I mentioned as well, I've got the link here to the documentation on autocomplete, so feel free to have a look at that as well. Now, I thought since we're playing around with the doctors, I could throw this in here as well, right? We're going to use autocomplete to help find a given doctor. Okay, we have just enough doctors to make this sort of worthwhile, right? So right now on the doctor index view, so I can kind of close a lot of these others. I'm going to keep index, and I'm going to be needing the doctor controller as well, right? So right up in the top of the index, here we have our filter section right now, okay? So in my copy-paste code, I have a complete filter section, a very simplified one, but it doesn't have the collapse going on or anything else. But I'm just going to, because we already had one started, I'm just going to add the little bit of code we need for it. So I thought I'd throw in addition to what we have. Now, it's true, we already have a search doctor name, right? So this is kind of like useless, except it gives a chance to demonstrate, right? Without having to pull in a whole bunch of other stuff just to do a quick demonstration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in here as well an additional, okay, input control, right? Now it's just going to be a text box. I'm going to call it search doctor, okay, rather than search string, right? And basically it will just say find doctor, right? And as we type letters in the name of the doctor, it'll filter out and give us a shrinking list for all the letters we type until we run out of either there are no options that match, okay, or we're down to one type of thing. Okay, so that'll give me the code I need right there in the view. Now, in the bottom of the view, we have to add some additional code down here, right? Again, we have our section here for scripts. Let me take a moment and kind of remind you how that works. We had a quick discussion earlier about the fact that the underscore layout page, right? If you come down here to our shared views and go to layout, right? This is the sort of host page, you might call it, for all of the views that we have so far. Now, just to mention it, down the road, you might get into a larger application where you have multiple layout pages for different areas of the application. But right now, every view we look at is being hosted or merged into the exact same underscore layout CSHTML file here, right? It's a proper, it has the doc type tag, it has the head section, everything else, the body and all that right? So it is a complete web page, except of course some content is merged in at runtime. In particular, of course, render body, right? This is the spot when we hit that, that's where the actual body of the individual views, every view we've worked on, okay, gets put in here with render body, right? Not the partial views necessarily, but the actual views, right? So anything like an edit view here, for example, okay, you notice that it doesn't have a doc type tag, it doesn't have a head section, and so on and so forth, right? There's no opening and closing HTML tags. This all gets squeezed in right here at render body, right? Other things that are happening inside layout, though, to emphasize this, at the bottom here, remember, we showed this before, render section scripts, right? That's why, and of course, it's not required, so a view doesn't have to have a script section, but if it does, it will be rendered here, right? That's why down here in this edit page, when we have these scripts at the bottom, this whole section called scripts gets merged into the layout right here, okay? We look for any section called scripts, and we basically merge it in at runtime. Okay, so that's how that works. So just reminding you of that basic fact. So here in our index then, here's our section scripts. So I need to add a little bit of code in here, right? One of the things we're going to want is we actually have to pull in the code for the jQuery widget itself, okay? I could do this in a couple spots, but I'll do it right here, okay? So this pulls in from jQuery UI, okay, all the code that we're going to need to support the widget, right? And I'm going to have a little bit of custom JavaScript here as well, okay? So we go to our search doctor. Remember, that's the ID that I gave to that input control, right? And we call .autocomplete, okay? Now I've got minimum length right now set to 1. This is how many characters you have to type before it will actually start to actually go and query the database, or query, okay, through this request URL and get data. Maybe I'll change it to 2 for now. Just we'll show you the difference later on. All right, so autocomplete needs a minimum length and then a source. The source is the basically the URL that we're going to use to call and get data. The data will come back in JSON format, right? Okay, so our URL action is the, you can see it right there. We have the action and the controller. The action is get doctors. The controller is our doctor controller. So I need to add that now. I'm going to go to the doctor controller and add an action called get doctors that returns in JSON format the data for this autocomplete, right? So let's come back to the doctor controller, okay? And in the index method, right, we do need to add, of course, a parameter as well, okay, for our new filter, right? So I'll add that. It's search doctor, so we'll just throw that in here to the list of parameters that we're going to be looking for as we call index, right? Now, it might be a null or an empty string, whatever, but that's fine. Okay. Then to actually use it to filter and find the doctor, we can come down here to, as our section where we're adding as many filters as needed, right? So I'll maybe just throw it after that last one that's there. And we're going to filter for the specific first and last name combination, because that's what we're going to display. We're going to display first name space last name, right? That's going to be what is shown in our search doctor input, okay? So that's how this code is written, right? We're adding a where clause to the doctors where the first name to upper concatenated to a space concatenated to the last name matches our search doctor converted to uppercase, right? That will actually should find just the one doctor that matches, okay? All right. If there was more than one that matched, that's okay. We'll find both of them, but that's all right. We'll not worry about that. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that right now. All right, so we also have to add that get doctors, okay? So I can do that anywhere. I'll do that down here after delete confirmed. And it returns a JSON result. That's something we've done before, right? Okay, so it returns data in JSON format, okay? We call it get doctors, and we're passing in the term. Now, that is important, okay? We're using the parameter name term to satisfy the requirement of jQuery's autocomplete widget, okay? That's something that we don't have a choice. I can't call it Fred, right? I have to actually use the word term, because that's what the widget wants to use. Okay, but I do just come and I get my result, okay, context.doctors, where, of course, the last name and upper name and so on and so forth, right? I'm using .contains, okay? So I'm checking for the characters I've typed in this term to see if they're contained in either the first or last name, right? My order by first name and then last name, okay? Because that's how we're entering it, is first name and last name. And then select new, right? Where the value is the first name concatenated to a space concatenated to last name, right? And that's returning all the full name, you might say. That's kind of like one way to put full name, but we're just doing it in code. And that's what we're getting, all the new full names of the ones that match. And that's it, okay? All right. Now, one thing else we have to add back here, we need another section, right? That I didn't add yet. So I'm going to have to go get that. Sorry. Where is my mouse gone? Okay. The jQuery widget also needs some styling, right? So I could put this anywhere inside the view. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to add a section here called styles, right? And so it just pulls in this style sheet from jQuery just so it has the necessary styles to show the autocomplete as required. Now, that introduces something new. Ooh, remember, we've had a lot of examples where we've had a section called scripts. We've never had one for styles before. Let's come back to the layout page, right? So we already had this code. This was already here. Styles are normally added up in the head section. You remember that from your basic HTML work, right? So that's one thing that is missing completely from our underscore layout, right? So we could just put our own code in here to take care of that, right? It can come anywhere in here. It doesn't really matter in the head section, right? So I'm going to say render section styles, right? Required as false. So that if I had it true, then every page I wanted, every view I wanted to merge into here would have to supply a section called styles. So that's why I have it required set to false. But if there is a section called styles, it gets added in, just like these links for different style sheets are basically put in place here. All right. Okay. Does it work? Let's see. I paused there again because it can take a little while coming up, but I didn't really need to. It was pretty fast this time. Okay. So once more, I'll come to doctors, right? And if I open the filter, now I can start typing. Now notice nothing happens with one character. Remember I set the minimum requirement of 2. Ah, and there we go. So now we have a list, okay? And then now it's getting shorter and shorter as I start typing letters. Now, so now I'm down to just one, okay, that matches so far. So I could select that one, click filter, and there we go. We just have that one record. Coming back to here, right? Nobody with an AB. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to take a second. I'll just minimize this. Let's go back. Change that back to one character. I don't have so much data here, right, that I often have when I do these demonstrations. Sometimes I'll have literally thousands upon thousands. Sorry, where did that go? Okay. Okay, so you see, just with one letter now, I've got quite a big list that contains the letter C at least somewhere inside here, right? And notice it's also case insensitive, but there you go. So, I mean, depending on the circumstance, you might, sometimes you might ask for 2 or 3 or 4 letters before you start actually returning values with your autocomplete. Now, there's no AU, combination of AU letters, eh? No, quite a few with AN, right? But anyway, you see how it works. So that's just another thing to tuck away in your toolkit to remember that, oh yes, whenever we have a huge number of records, right, I can actually manage nicely with an autocomplete. There we are. All right. That's it.